What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Let's Talk Live here on the LTL Media channel. I am Brian. If this is your first time over here on the channel, I want to welcome everybody in. We're going to talk, obviously, about the most recent developments in the Karen Reed case today. And, before I get into that, I just want to kind of address a few things that have kind of happened over some lives in the last couple of days, some of the last lives that I've done here. If you can see, I'm in my bedroom today. Everything is safe in my studio. Essentially what happened was I didn't make it in time over to the studio today. I just had a bunch of stuff here going on at home. So I decided to just do this from home. So we'll be back in the studio on Thursday when Maz Media comes into the studio and hangs out with me. So listen, let me just get into a few things here. My life has been pretty crazy the last 2 weeks, especially this last week. I've had to been dealing with some personal changes that have been really difficult for me to get through. All is well. It's just going to take some time to heal through some of those things. And I've just been a little off lately, I guess. So I'm going to try to get through this the best I can today. And, I went back and reflected on some things that I said when I had Mark Better on the other day. And I want to kind of address that. And it was particularly to the comment that I made about law tubers, law tubers or lawyers on YouTube. And I want to just make sure that everybody understands this and that they're clear about this. I think what I said was because it was out of some frustration, some kind of selfishness, maybe, because the case, Karen's case has been so near and dear to everything that I've been doing on this channel for like the last 10 months. And maybe some frustration on myself that I'll let you all know something that you probably don't know about me. When I was younger in my 20s, I did attend a community college and I wanted to be a lawyer. And I took a semester, and honestly, I couldn't hack it. My brain just does not function in that way. I don't have the discipline to sit through that. And I think I might have said that out of a couple of things, in the sense of maybe I was angry at myself that I never went through and completed school. Shit like that happens, kind of beat yourself up a little bit. And I think just out of some frustration of kind of YouTube itself. Listen, bottom line is this. I have the gift of gab. I have the gift of storytelling. I can put together an amazing presentation. I am not a lawyer. I'm not a legal analyst. I picture myself as just kind of a regular guy hanging out, making videos, and giving my opinion about it. And whether you're going to listen to it or you're not, that's your choice. So I think I said those things out of frustration, in the sense of I don't have that leg up. I don't have a degree behind me, to say, hey, you should come listen to me. And you know what? By all means, every single one of those law tubers that went through law school, whether you became a lawyer, if you became a doctor, if you became something that requires a degree, I think that is an incredible discipline to go through that. I know that I could not do it. I can't do it. It's too hard. And I commend every person that has an occupation like that can go through the years of schooling and master that skill. I wish I could be that. And I know people can go like, you can still do it. You can still do it. Yeah, maybe, but I just don't have the discipline to do it. And I want to commend all of the law tubers here, and just kind of apologize for what I said. And I felt kind of really weird saying that with Mark on the channel that night. And if Mark is watching this, and if you took any offense to what I said, I apologize to that. So I wanted to make sure that was clear to everybody, that I cleared that up. I'm not downing anybody that has ever become a lawyer. I think it's a fascinating skill to have that certain skill set to absorb an amount of immense information, and to be able to recall that. It is a very, very highly trained skill. And I wish that I could only speak like that. I wish that I could only do those things. And, maybe that was a little bit of frustration on myself that I said that. So I wanted to make sure that I made very clear about that. It was a topic of conversation in a lot of the comments that were on that video. And anyway, we'll move on. So I want to welcome everybody in here today. Again, we're going to go over some Karen Read stuff. We have new developments. Obviously, we had Trooper Proctor's status hearing. There was a peaceful protest out at the Massachusetts State Police Barracks. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll try to make some sense of everything that happened in this motion to dismiss and all of the other things that have been going on behind the scenes with Team Read. They have just hired a new lawyer to come in and help with the appeal, and we'll talk about that as well. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Let's get into my presentation. So let me just pull up my screen here. It sucks. I don't have I have a screen here at home, but it's a vertical stream. It's not a horizontal, and I usually have two horizontal. So deal with me. I'm going to be kind of looking around everywhere through this entire presentation. So let's do this. Let's bring up my screen. Okay, so obviously Karen Read trial, some new developments came out. We had Trooper Proctor's status hearing, and we found out a few jurors have spoken out to the defense, and we'll get into that today. So going to Trooper Proctor, obviously some news came out. He had his status hearing, and he has been suspended without pay. And it goes here, says from Boston 25 News, Trooper Proctor could be fired or facing charges before second Karen Read trial starts. Experts say. And again, we don't even know if there's going to be a second trial. We know that Karen has a status hearing on the 22nd. I will be there in person to support during that status hearing. And, listen, I understand that, in my heart of hearts, and I think everybody that's watching this show, this man should be fired. Flat out should be fired. There should be no judge, jury. But listen, that's just how I feel. But there is a process into getting him out. And the sad thing about this, and in my personal opinion, I think what's going to happen with this guy is I think that they're going to bury this so deep. This guy probably is not going to lose his pension. He's probably not going to lose his benefits. And he should rightfully so lose all of that because of his conduct in this case and what came out on the stand during this trial. This guy should be fired, absolutely fired. But there's a process to get to that point. And it's very frustrating. I've seen a lot of comments on all the socials that people, and I even asked people the other day, I did a YouTube short and I said, look, how do you feel about this? And fired. Everybody's fired. But unfortunately, there's a process to go through this. I personally think that this guy, which would be a huge miscarriage of justice, that this guy is able to be buried somewhere at a desk job and continue to go on doing the things that he's been doing, or just to sit at a desk and collect his pension, or if they do any type of payout or anything like that. This guy should be absolutely terminated. He's a dirty person, extremely dirty cop. And, there's others that follow in this as well. So let's pull up this article here. We'll talk a little bit about it, and just bear with me. I'm going to be doing a lot of screen switching back and forth today. So here we go. From Boston 25, Trooper Proctor. Just want to make sure my screen's up here. Trooper Proctor is facing charges before second Karen Read trial. Says disgraced Massachusetts State Police Trooper Proctor, the lead investigator in the Karen Read murder case, was suspended Monday without pay amid the ongoing internal affairs investigation into his unprofessional behavior. Unprofessional, if that. How about disgusting? Absolutely disgusting and irreprehensible behavior in this case. Interim Massachusetts State Police Colonel John Ma accepted a 3-person board recommendation following the duty status hearing in Framingham, making Proctor suspension effective immediately. This guy is such a clown. That they actually wouldn't even let him, or he didn't even come in to appear in person during this. They didn't want that fiasco. They didn't want that media fiasco. They didn't want the protests out there. And so they're just like, oh, we'll just do this virtually. We'll do it virtually. They didn't want that headache. And we'll talk a little bit more about public perception and policing here. I have some things that I put together. So Proctor was tasked in investigating the death of John O'Keefe, Reed's Boston police officer boyfriend, but came under fire during witness testimony during the trial of a series of disparaging texts about Reed that he sent to his friends, family, and supervisors, which he read aloud in court during her trial. And I'm going to be honest with you, his supervisors were involved in that text stream, and we'll talk about this a little bit here. Those guys should be reprimanded as well, and or if fired, because they had an opportunity. They all had an opportunity to say, hey, you need to stop. But because they're all involved in this cover up, and bottom line is they need Karen Reed. They need Karen Reed to be the fall person in all of this, because what is it going to do? It's going to save the Canton PD. It's going to save the Massachusetts State Police. It's going to save Judge Bev. It's going to save the Commonwealth, DA Michael Morrissey. It's going to save the McAlberts. They need Karen Reed as the fall person. And I know all of you are very, anticipating this motion to dismiss. I'm going to tell you right now, and I've said this all along, the Commonwealth is going to push this all the way. It's not going to go away until every outlet has been exhausted in this case, and Karen Reed can freely clear her name. It's not going to go away. I know that everybody has high hopes. I'm telling you, they're going to continue to push this because they need Karen Reed to be the fall person. And they're hooked now. They have no other way of out of this, because the story that they've been telling over the last 2.5 years, and now that it's on the record that we had to sit through of 8 weeks of the Commonwealth telling lies, there's no way they're going to be able to back out of this now. Karen Reed is their fall person, but she's going to continue to fight. She's going to continue to fight, and she's not going to give up. And I have confidence that she has the most amazing team of lawyers behind her that will find her and get her out of this complete mess. And then what we need to start doing is going after the real perpetrators in this. And we know who all that is. All those people that were at 34 Fairview that night. All right, going on. Let's see. Boston 25 legal expert Peter Eklund said Proctor could be fired or charged criminally by the time of the retrial Reed comes around. There's no dancing around the fact by the time the retrial happens, he could very well be completed, fired, or facing certain kinds of charges against him for his behavior in the investigation. So it clearly agrees by all that he's going to look bad if he's going to testify again. Yeah, you can't put him back up on the stand. You think the Commonwealth's going to call Michael Proctor back to the stand if there's a retrial? I'm going to tell you right now, there's no way in hell. The defense will be calling him, and it's just going to look even worse for him. All right, let's go to this video clip here. This is from NBC Boston.
Our top story tonight, Trooper Michael Proctor, the lead investigator in the Karen Reed case, has been suspended from the Massachusetts State Police without pay. Good Monday evening. Thanks for being with us. I'm Priscilla Casper.
And I'm Glenn Jones. That's not the only big development related to the Reed case tonight. Just 1 week after a judge declared a mistrial, Reed's lawyers make a move to dismiss 2 of her criminal charges, including second-degree murder. That could put the brakes on Reed facing a retrial.
Sherry, thank you for the $2 Canadian. I appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, let's go.
Team coverage for you tonight on this case and the cop who investigated it. We want to begin with our NBC 10's Eli Rosenberg. He's joining us live in South Boston with more on Trooper Proctor's punishment. Eli.
Yeah, there was a...
Let me just answer this really quick. LA asking, I wonder if the hearing is foyable. Little tongue twister there. I'm going to tell you right now, you're not getting anything in the state of Massachusetts. They hardly release anything, especially any ties to this case. You think they're going to hand over that information? They're going to make up some excuse. Believe me. And it's funny. I was talking to, who was I talking to? I was talking to someone the other day about FOIA requests. I always say FOIA. FOIA requests. And I said, Massachusetts, absolutely impossible. If you ever want to FOIA request anything and you're doing anything in Arizona, get it immediately. I had a whole case file of a young lady that was covering here on a channel, Chelsea Grimm. She went missing out in Arizona. FOIA'd the request, had everything in a thumb drive within like a few days. Amazing service out there. Amazing service. You're not getting anything here in Massachusetts, but get it. Not getting it. Lena on me says, I was here last live. Understood you were expressing the struggles on building your platform. You only use LawTube as an example of a privilege. We know you respect him. Yeah, I mean, listen, I respect the LawTubers. You know, I know, you know, I talked about the beginning. I talked about it on my live the other day. I'm not shitting on anybody with a specific skill. It is just harder for people like me to get ourselves out there, because I think YouTube kind of pushes those channels a little bit more, and rightfully so. They've earned that respect. They've earned that skill. And I'm going to talk, I can't break down a legal document the way that a lawyer can. Believe me, that's why we have special guests on like Mark Betterow and Melanie Little. And I appreciate them for giving me their time. They don't have to come on my show, but I appreciate that they do that, you know? And I don't have the privilege of calling a lawyer and going, hey, can you explain all this to me? I just don't have that privilege. So I try to make the best out of it I can by sourcing videos and articles and conversations and just kind of putting my thoughts together, you know, on it. So, you know, that's just the way it is. Karen, thank you so much. $10 Canadian. I got a lot of Canadian friends in here today. So I personally believe Judge Bev erred in calling a mistrial without asking for the verdict slips by polling the jury. So I'm going to talk about polling the jury in Massachusetts, something that I Googled and looked up, and we'll talk about that. Perfect reason for an appeal. Or, you know, even now we're talking about double jeopardy here, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Let's see. Other YouTubers have said it the same thing. It is hard. It's very hard on this platform. I'm very hard on myself. I'm very, very hard on myself. I'm very hard on myself in the sense of to succeed in life. I was never handed anything in my life. Okay. I don't come from a prestigious background of parents that have a lot of money or, you know, my parents were working class people. I'm a working class guy. I've been grinding it, doing what I've been doing for the last 25, 30 plus years. You know, I had to just go out. You know, it was the sense of my mother and father split when I was at a young age, and my mother didn't have a lot and did every single thing that she could to support. And I had to be educated through being on the streets or being with my friends and learn kind of the street education and sit down if I had a moment to study something or read a book, if I could even sit through and do that. But mostly I was always a very visual guy. So I would watch things and try to learn and look up things. I was always very curious by nature. But I just lost my train of thought, damn it. I just lost my train of thought. But it's very hard on this platform. It's not easy. It is not easy here. And you have to try to be as creative as you can. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy putting all this stuff together and talking about it. And I love, you know, to come in and just see the chat and see what people are thinking. It's why I do this. It's why I do the lives. If I sit down, you know how long that 45-second short took me to do the other day? That took me over an hour. I can't sit and do a video, but if I can hit a live and just let my brain spill out, then I'll do it. Let's see. Let me go back up here and a couple more chats come in. Let's see this one. Coy, thank you so much for the $10 to keep up the good rest work. Yes. Thank you so much. Allison, $10 says, looks like the new attorney that filed the motion about the jurors is an amazing law background. Yes, he's one of the best here in Massachusetts. Why would he agree to get involved if he didn't think something was wrong? It's an excellent point. Very, very excellent point. Okay, so let's move on here. So let's play through this here.
Hearing earlier today, a virtual hearing, we are told Michael Proctor faced one of four possible outcomes. He is now facing the most severe, suspended without pay, happening right now here in South Boston. You can see a very vocal, it has gotten a little smaller in the last couple hours, but a very vocal group that has gathered here outside the State Police barracks in South Boston in support of Karen Reed. They are also
Jillian, thank you so much for the $25. I believe it's on Cash App. She said, thanks. Love your channel and all that you do. Thank you for the support. I appreciate that. All right, let's keep moving on.
More police accountability. In South Boston, voicing their displeasure on a day the state police moved to suspend without pay the lead investigator in the Karen Reed murder investigation.
I don't like they say angry. That's just not my vocabulary, so I use motivated. People are motivated for change in the Massachusetts State Police.
Last week, within hours of Karen Reed's mistrial, state police announcing it had relieved Michael Proctor of duty. That setting the stage for today's duty status hearing.
These are internal proceedings. There's nothing involved with the DA. There's nothing involved with any other outside entities.
Todd McGee is a security analyst.
I love this quote from Scott. Scott says, every person has their own strengths and weaknesses, various talents, life experience. We're all unique, none any less special. That's really nice, Scott. That's very well said. Very, very well said. We all have a story. We all have a story in our lifetime. And, if we can share it or do something in a positive way to help people, that's what we should be doing. We're us elders, because I consider myself now an older person, we're here to help teach the generation that's coming up behind us. And then we pass down that knowledge and skills to that group of people. And then they take what they learn from us and they just keep passing it. And that's the way that it should be. That's the way it should be.
Analyst and served as a state trooper for 24 years before retiring. He says, as a trooper, Proctor is entitled to this hearing through the Troopers Union, something we are told happened virtually today with Proctor meeting with 3 commission officers.
All of this information to include what transpired in court during Trooper Proctor's testimony.
This is me speaking on June 9th.
And McGee says that testimony in open court makes this case much different than the ones usually conducted by state police internal affairs. In the end, the board finding Proctor should be suspended without pay, a recommendation accepted by the head of the state police around 2 this afternoon.
There's a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes. There are a lot of layers to this type of a process. But certainly this is, for an administrative proceeding, what we would call due process.
And the organizers of what you're seeing right here, the same organizers we saw gathering outside the courthouse in Dedham in support of Karen Reed. They originally told me they had planned to be out here until 6 o'clock, but you can see a great deal still remain out here a little after 6 o'clock. And we reached out to Michael Proctor's lawyer for comment on today's developments and have not heard back.
Yeah,
I'm in South Boston.
Not commenting.
NBC 10 Boston.
All right, so let's do this. Let's go back to my presentation. I want you all to remember. This quote from the testimony from Michael Proctor. And we're going to play a little bit of that testimony so you can remember how awful this guy is. He's a very, very dirty cop. And this guy should never, ever hold a badge ever again. And his superiors and the people that were inside that text change need to go as well. Trooper Proctor, this is a quote while I was on the stand. I believe poor jokes and unprofessional language have no bearing on the integrity in the facts and physical evidence in this case. So he wanted to negate his conduct. The awful things that he said about Karen Reed, the awful things that he said about David Yannetti, if that's not a rehearsed statement, then I don't know what is. That's probably from his lawyer. You abused your power, sir. You had no integrity in this case. You were unprofessional. And not only if you've done it in this case, there are multiple cases that you've also done it in. This is a snapshot of who this person is. This is a snapshot of how this guy runs in his own personal life. This is who he is. And his personal life came over in Dirty's professional life because he had power and he had a badge and he had a group of people behind him because he felt like he was kryptonite. Nothing was ever gonna hurt him. He was a status elite. There are people in professions of all professions that are dirty, that things like this take place. Integrity is how you act when no one is watching you. Integrity is carrying out the rules and regulations that you are sworn by, specifically in this profession. If you are a doctor, you have integrity with your patients. If you are a police officer, you are to have integrity with the people that you protect and serve. If you are an EMS worker, you have integrity in the duties to save someone's life or give them, help them with a medical emergency. That's integrity. What you did in your actions was not integrity. It's pretty disgusting. And this guy just needs to go away forever. He needs to have criminal charges brought up on him. He did not protect and serve in this case. He twisted and manipulated the evidence and said awful, vile things about someone in a case. And that's not only the first time he's done it. Believe me, it's happened before. And what other things has he said about other people in cases? Has he made any racist implications in a case or said something about someone's race or background or religion? It's quite possible. Maybe things that we'll never find out, but it wouldn't surprise me. Because the things that were done and said here, it wouldn't surprise me. Let me just go up to some of these chats that came through. Valerie, thank you so much. Do you think Proctor will be the first to talk if that helps him keep his pension? I don't know. I don't know. That's a tough question. If money is the answer to this guy, yeah, he'll rat out everybody to save his own ass, because he's the one that's looking the worst right now out of all the people that have been involved in this case. Police, EMS workers. He's the worst one right now. I don't know. That's a great question. But if money is a motivator for this guy, absolutely. He may squawk. Maybe they cut a deal. We're not going to ever know what goes on behind the scenes, what kind of deal they work out. You think they're gonna release that to the public? Hell no. Sarah says, thanks for the 25. I appreciate it. I know you were talking about his correlation to Karen, but if I were Brian Walsh's attorney, I would be finding a way to subpoena his text message to see if there's anything unprofessional related to that investigation. I did hear, and we've talked about this before, some motions that that Brian Walsh's attorney filed. I'd be doing everything too. And that's scary, because in my opinion, I think Brian Walsh did it. But I'm hoping it doesn't affect that case that much. It's pretty clear to me what happened. Haley, $10, says Proctor knew what Karen was knew that Karen was financially successful and still did the things that he did and said. I can only imagine the things he has done and said to other defendants that come from lower classes. Exactly. And we talked about that. Cam, thanks for the 5, said my son passed away of an overdose in Canton in 2015. Keep thinking what they said about him. I'm sorry for your loss. But it could be a possible thing that things were said. And that's awful to think that. Okay, let's play some of that testimony just to refresh you all how bad this guy actually is. I'm not going to play the most brutal stuff that we heard, but we're going to hear that quote here in this testimony when Alan Jackson does cross.
May I inquire, Your Honor?
Yes.
Trooper Proctor, Trooper DeChico had sent you a photograph of my colleague, Mr. Yannetti, correct?
real quick, just going to pull this up. Dr. Jen, thank you so much for the $50. Says, thank you for your vulnerability and sharing your insights. It's evident that a law degree isn't necessary to provide excellent commentary for someone who has completed medical school and residency. Wow, thank you so much. That was very nice. I appreciate that comment. And I just try to do what I can do here. Just try to do what I can do. And I just love seeing all of you on a daily basis if you can make it over in the chats. Because that's really I guess the fun part about this is that we can, why the cases that we talk about are so tragic and the things that happen to people can be very tragic or rewarding in some cases. I just love to see what people are thinking and the insights. And that's why I love looking at the chat and reading the chat. And it helps kind of guide the program as well, too, because I get to hear all your feedback. I wish I could hear your voices. That would be interesting. I wish, YouTube could do something like that where we can have maybe someone record a 15-second or 30-second voice note and we can play those. Hey, YouTube, if you're watching this now, maybe I created something here for you all. That would be really cool. A voice comment. We could play your comment. But all right, let's keep on here.
Yes.
Your Honor, because of the technical issue, I'm not going to display on the television. May I display this hard copy briefly?
Sure.
Thank you. You see that, gentleman?
I do, sir.
Is that the photograph that you received?
Yes.
Is that what you referred to on direct
Linda, thank you
examination?
for the
Mr. Lally,
139 super
photograph
sticker
from of Mr. Yannetti.
Correct.
And then your response was what?
I hate that man. I truly hate that man.
Actually, your response was, I'm going through his retarded client's phone right now, correct?
Yes, after the picture, sir. Yes.
Who's the retarded client?
I was referring to Miss Reed again, unprofessional language.
I'm asking for who you were referring to.
Miss
I know
Reed.
you got an explanation. Who was it that you were referring to as retarded?
Miss Reed.
Karen Reed, the woman sitting to my left.
Yes, sir.
The subject of your investigation as a professional, correct?
Yes, sir.
As an unbiased,
Yeah,
objective.
maybe that's something I can look into, Micro Kimmy. I plan on taking calls, and I have the ability to do it at my studio. It's just I have to test it out, just make sure everything works properly. And that's something that I thought about, maybe doing one night a week and just take calls and just give people like 3 to 5 minutes to kind of ramble. It's something that I thought about. I've done it in the past. If you all just joined the show, it's something that I used to do in the past. Like one night a week. I think it was Kimmy. I think it was Saturday nights. I know you were here. Saturday nights I was taking calls and I used to do that. Maybe that's something I go back to and go through. Yeah, unprofessional language. All right, let's keep playing through this.
Active investigator. The person that you were investigating, you referred to your bosses as retarded. Correct?
Again, poor language on my part.
Poor language is one way to put it. Completely offensive is another way to put it, right?
Objection.
I've got to sustain that, Mr. Jackson.
After you referred to my client as retarded, then you decided to make a comment about Mr. Yannetti, her lawyer, correct?
Correct.
And what did you say about Mr. Yannetti again?
I hate.
Yeah, Peggy, I think I'm actually going to go down to that one. I think I'm going to sit in on it, making some arrangements to be there. So I may be there tonight. Yeah, Saturday nights, remember? Yeah, we used to do Saturday night calls. It was a good show back then. We used to get like 800 people that would watch. And I was a very small channel at that time. But yeah, I'm thinking about going down tonight, Peggy, and sitting in on the select board. All right, let's keep going through this.
Hate that man. I truly hate that man.
I hate that man. I truly hate him, correct?
Correct.
You didn't say I dislike him, I disagree with him. You said I hate him, correct?
Correct, sir.
That's a visceral response to someone who's just doing a job, correct?
Objection.
Sustained. You can ask it differently.
Sure. Let me ask it this way. Were you upset or annoyed or pissed off that Karen Reed had gotten representation, legal representation, to represent her?
No, not at all. That's her right.
Let's see. D Brown, $5 says, hopefully you feel validated with your tip that you had received that the jurors said about murder being being off the table 12-0 with that came out. Yeah, listen, you know, I had a tip that was a very close source. I know that there was a lot of them that were going around. People were, you know, just making their own assumptions on it. And, you know, I was right on the second degree charge. I was correct on that. And maybe there was just a misinterpretation, but I did say, I think I said on that it was split. And then we come to find out it wasn't both undercharges. It was just one that they were hung on, which makes absolutely no sense to me, because if you can't prove the accident, which Arca disproved the accident, how can you be split on one of the undercharges? It didn't make sense to me. And when I went back, and we're going to play this a little later, I'm going to show you, we're going to go back over the verdict slip. The verdict slip is still confusing to me when I look at it. So maybe those jurors were confused. I don't know. I mean, you know, as more things come out and more jurors talk, we'll get a little bit more of that information. But I mean, it felt good with the tip that I got. It was from a very, very credible source. Probably a little bit of confusion, but it was a close, credible source. And you know, I appreciate the tip. And look at, you know, stuff comes out all the time. People hear things and say things, but I felt that it was pretty credible to go on air and talk about it. So Paula, thank you so much for the $2. I appreciate it. And Brooklyn, $9.99 says, with regard to the O'Keefe family believing Karen is guilty, what do you think can be done to have them face the reality that their brother was beaten to death? Perhaps it's easier for them to think that. I don't think that they're ever going to think that John O'Keefe went inside 34 Fairview and was beaten to death. I don't think that. I think that it's so far gone now. It's so fast, so past that point that, you know, and I said this on my live the other night, Paul, the Arca guys proved it, man. That's physics. You're not going to deny science. Like, you can't deny science. It's the truth. That's hard evidence. That's just, we live on this planet by physics. How are you going to deny physics? You can't deny science. I wish you could see this. And I'm telling you, I said this at the very, very beginning of my live. They need Karen Reed. They need a fall person, and they're going to go with this all the way. And to sit there, and I said this on my Paul O'Keefe live the other day, like, really, bro? Like, you sat through all of that. And I sat in on Buchnick's first or second day. I was in court on the first day he was called. And I'm seeing things that they're literally bringing up on the screen. And I'm looking at Paul and I'm going, dude, like, you don't think that anything here that you have heard in the last, at that point, it was like 6 weeks, 5 weeks, that nothing that you've sat there and scratched your head and said, this doesn't seem right to me. But he goes in and covers for it on the interview, like when he was talking about, oh, well, they had to go out and collect evidence in a blizzard. And, you know, he was just making excuses. And he's like, you know, Jen McCabe and Kerry Roberts, you know, they've been great friends of the family for a long time. And I'm like, wow, like, you're really covering for these people right now. He's so brainwashed in all of this. I feel sorry, you know, like, sorry. I don't know. I know some people don't like when I say that, but it's like, bro, like, they've got you so hooked. And I just wish you would, I don't know. I just wish you could see it, you know, like Arca. You're not going to be able to discredit those guys. I mean, they are the best of the best, and they know physics and they know science. And we, like I said, we live on this planet by science. So it's tough. Paula, thank you so much for the 2. She said, why do you think anyone could find Karen Reed guilty? I don't know. I really don't know. I don't. I really don't know. And, you know, I think that maybe some of the information that came out to some of those jurors were maybe it was too technical for them to understand. Maybe they just didn't grasp ARCA. Maybe they didn't grasp the science. I don't know. Or, as we found out, jurors that were sitting there on the last day in closing arguments, they were intimidated. They felt intimidated by Brian Albert, and they thought it was Brian Higgins. And that's how fucked up this whole thing is. They think that those dudes are the same dudes. And they pretty much are. They were hanging out together. They both destroyed their phones. So yeah, maybe they were a little intimidated. All right, let's get on to back in hearing Jackson discredit Trooper Proctor. Or now Michael Proctor.
Well, let me ask you this. In August of 2022, you said you absolutely hate it, correct?
I don't know if I used absolutely. Yeah, I didn't use absolutely, sir.
I think
You
so
used
too.
Truly, correct?
Truly, yes.
How do you feel about him now? He's sitting
I
right
love
there.
that.
I still don't care for him now.
I'll let it stand.
Me too. Yep.
What did you tell your colleagues that you were looking for as you sat at almost 10 p.m. at night on a Wednesday night, August 17th, 2022, looking through Karen Reed's phone?
I didn't tell them I was looking through anything. They knew I was going through Miss Reed's phone. I provided a inappropriate joke as an update. They knew I was going through location data, text messages, Google searches. But like I had mentioned earlier, I had to stop.
Except Trooper Proctor, none of that really professional sounding stuff ended up in your comments to your bosses, did it?
Again, it was a poor joke.
Is that yes or no?
Did not know.
It did not.
No,
As a
sir.
matter of fact, what did you write after you talked about going through the quote retarded client's phone?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
No nudes so far.
No nudes so far, correct?
Correct.
And you said that to your bosses.
Yes, sir.
This guy deserves everything he's going to get. Every bad thing that comes his way because of his actions, he deserves it. 100%.
You were looking for naked photographs of Miss Reed.
So let's see. Grant's Pants says he thinks and he says the jury was handpicked by Aunt Bev. Tara, thank you so much for the $5 Canadian. A lot of Canadians. Nice to see you in here today. O'Keefe family has been well stewed in the McAlbert, Proctor, Higgins, Berkowitz story. John's own mom helped get the story straight. Cross exams blew up the story. Absolutely. It was the most detrimental thing to this case. But knowing that all of this stuff was going to come out, how the hell do you think that you were going to spin this to a jury or to the public and make this look good? You knew you had all the case information. You had all the case information. This absolutely discredited the Commonwealth's case. I mean, this was the biggest hit, one of the biggest hits to the case.
On a Wednesday night, as you sat in your office at 9:44 p.m.
Aaron didn't do it.
Correct?
No, not correct.
Let me ask you a question. Have you ever looked for naked photos of a male suspect that you were investigating?
I don't look for naked photos in anyone's phones.
But you said you were looking for nudes of Miss Reed.
Like I had said, Mr. Jackson, it was an inappropriate joke.
So this is a citizen.
Yeah.
She's a woman. You were supposed to be objectively investigating. Does your text message to your colleagues at Massachusetts State Police reflect an objective investigation of a citizen?
Objection.
You can get part of that question and ask it again.
Real quick, Sherry, thank you for the gifted 5 memberships. I appreciate it. Welcome new members. Welcome in new members.
Do you believe that your text messages were reflective of an objective investigator?
Objection.
I'll allow that. Do you believe that, Trooper Proctor?
I believe poor jokes have, in unprofessional language, have no bearing on the integrity and the facts and physical evidence of this case.
There's
not
the
that they don't
quote.
have any bearing on the facts and integrity. It's that they have no place in a professional investigation because
Right.
it shows bias, right?
Objection.
So I have to sustain that as asked. Go ahead and ask it differently, Mr. Jackson.
You weren't so much as objectively investigating Karen Reed as objectifying her, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
Isn't that right?
Rephrase the question, please.
You weren't so much as objectively investigating her as objectifying her in those moments.
I'm going to tell you right now, this guy does not care. Look at his body language. He does not care. Doesn't care. This guy has no remorse in anything that he's ever done.
Correct?
Again, Mr. Jackson, it was a poor choice of words and a joke that I should not have texted out. But from the start of the investigation, we didn't know what we had.
And your Trooper Proctor, your point in saying no nudes so far to your colleagues in Massachusetts State Police was to suggest that you were looking for nudes and you'd update them when you found them, correct?
Let's see, $2 Canadian. O'Keefe's had some form of Stockholm syndrome. Yeah, I talked about that the other day in my Paul O'Keefe live.
Incorrect.
Well, let me ask you a question. Did you find any nudes of
Again,
Karen Reed?
I didn't go through the photos, sir.
Did you find any nudes of Karen Reed?
I didn't go through the photos, sir.
You weren't successful in your quest.
I came across text messages from Miss Reed to another attorney on January 29th, so I had to stop looking through her phone.
So you got sidetracked before you could get to the naked pictures of Miss Reed.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Guy
Sustained.
doesn't care.
To be clear, when you sent those text messages on that group chat, those text messages included, as we said, or as you said, not one, but two of your supervisors, correct?
Correct.
Were you ever reprimanded for your conduct in sending that text message?
Objection.
So that's sustained. Do we need to go to sidebar based on what you told me earlier?
We do not.
Okay, so,
I'll ask it a different way.
okay.
Did either Trooper Fanning or Trooper Buchanan dress you down in a responsive text message in that text thread?
Now, this is important. This is very important because these are superiors. These are Michael Proctor's bosses. They were in that text stream and they had the opportunity to say, stop. And they didn't. They kept going with it.
Doing something so abhorrent as looking for nudes or referring to nudes of a female suspect or subject of your investigation. Did that ever happen?
Not that I can recall.
As a matter of fact, in reference to one of the text messages, in the
It's right here,
same
Kimba.
string,
You're right.
your boss, Yuri Buchanan, actually responded to the photo of
Give him a thumbs up.
Mr. Yannetti, didn't he?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Timmy says, you think he had no integrity until he saw the text exchange with Yannetti. Then all of a sudden he had integrity and put the phone down my ass. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This guy kept looking. Believe me, he kept looking.
He did, sir.
After you received the photo, that's when you said, I'm, quote, funny, I'm going through his retarded client's phone. Is that right?
Objection.
I'll allow this, but not
Welcome,
too many.
Maria. Thank you for
Sure.
subscribing.
Is that correct? It's on the top of page
Yes, sir.
685.
That's correct.
And Yuri Buchanan liked that comment. Funny, I'm going through his retarded client's phone. Didn't he?
I see you laughed at an image here, sir. I can't tell if he liked that comment, sir.
May I approach?
Yes.
I don't know if it's just because it's faded or... Yeah, my copy's faded.
Top 2685. You can use my copy of that also.
All right. Thank you.
What do you see on the top of that page?
That Sergeant Buchanan liked it.
Like what?
The going through his retarded client's phone, sir.
May I approach?
Yes.
I'll take my copy.
There you go.
I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that.
So your supervisors at Massachusetts State Police not only didn't ride you for making comments like this,
Thanks for the
encouraged
$2.
it.
Objection.
Sustained.
Trooper Proctor, this is your direct chain of command. Is that right? You're a Buchanan.
Yes, sir.
Did you believe that your conduct was a misuse of your authority and power as you were going through her phone in August of 2022?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
No, I had a warrant signed by a district clerk, Stoughton district clerk, to go through Miss Reed's phone. I
Justifying
don't think it was an
now.
abuse of power. I had every right to go through that phone.
Did the warrant say anything about looking for nudes of my client?
Objection.
Did it
No,
say anything about that?
Your Honor.
Okay, next question.
So that would be an abuse of the power that was given to you by the court, correct?
There you go.
Objection.
Sustained.
Trooper Proctor, you'd agree that the hallmark of any good investigation, as you've been taught and others in Massachusetts State Police have been taught, is that the investigation and the investigator have to be fair. They have to be impartial. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Meaning that the investigation has to be free of conflicts, right?
Yes, sir.
The investigator has to be free of conflicts, right?
Yes,
The investigation has to be free of bias. Is that right?
correct.
You can't be biased against the person that you're investigating. That would compromise the entire thing, wouldn't it?
Yes,
Basically, you follow the evidence. You're supposed to follow the evidence wherever it takes you, right?
correct.
Good or bad, top to bottom,
Kelly,
just follow
thank you
the
so much
evidence
for
and
the 10 on
report it
Cash
back.
App. I
That's
appreciate
how
it.
an investigation is supposed to be run, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
And these are things that you learn early on at Massachusetts State Police Academy, and then in your
Chloe, real quick. Chloe Albert's Revenge. That's a great name. He's so full of it. He wasn't emotional about the case, like he said. If he was, he wouldn't have done so much to ensure that justice would not be served. Someone who cared would not have risked that. And you're right. And you know what? Here's the thing, too. You are trained in this profession to not let your emotions get involved. He's been through plenty of training for that. And you're saying that your emotions got the best of you? You're a weak person. You're weak. You are trained in this profession to not let your emotions get the best of you. Or at least you should be trained. And your emotions should not get the best of you.
detective training. Isn't that right?
It is.
Literally, it's part of an oath that you took at the academy that you will, quote, faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all of the
Right
duties
there.
incumbent on you as a Massachusetts State Police trooper, right?
Yes, sir.
You swore that oath.
I did.
When you start an investigation, everybody in that investigation should be treated exactly the same. Don't you believe
Right.
that's true?
Correct.
Everybody, have you ever heard the phrase, everybody's a suspect until they're not?
Right.
Objection.
Sustained.
It's especially important early in an investigation before all of the facts are known that the investigator is not compromised by bias, prejudice, right?
Correct.
Most important early in the investigation, because that's when the most things are up in the air. There's the cloud, the fog of not knowing exactly what the truth is, right?
Objection.
Sustained.
In other words, Trooper Proctor, you don't get to pick a suspect and then try to find evidence to support your choice, right?
Correct.
But in this case, it's exactly what you did, isn't it?
Absolutely not.
Liar.
All right, Mr. Jackson, why don't we end for today?
Liar. So I just want to reiterate how bad this guy is. And not only him, let's not forget these fine gentlemen too. This is the Massachusetts. If you're from Massachusetts, this is your tax dollars at work. These are all the people that were in that text chain. And as Howie Carr said, the Fab Five. These are the salaries they made. Fanning, $230,000. Bukaki, $211,000. Moore, $142,000. Kiskoski, $142,000. DeChico, $155,000. Tully, $214,000. This is abuse of power. This is, I have the kryptonite shield on my chest, and no one's going to be able to run through me, take me over, whatever. I'm the man. Nothing can penetrate me. Well, guess what? When you have a fabulous defense team that can dig in and pull the truth and get the facts out there, the kryptonite goes away. Let me just pull this up really quick. Sonia, thank you so much. Thank you for your comment and your sensitivity, sending good vibes from Portugal. Thanks for joining from Portugal. I appreciate it. All right, let me just, it's going to be a little hard for me to read. So I look at public image and trust. I hope you all can see this. It's a little hard. I'm going to have to look over here to read it in my failing eyes. So what does this create? It creates trust issues. Trust between the community and law enforcement can be severely damaged. Residents may become skeptical and or distrustful in police officers in general, fearing that similar misconduct could occur again. This is smeared now, the Massachusetts State Police. They're going to have to go through years and years and years of rebuilding the image, and they may never able to do that. They may never be able to do that. Public confidence. Confidence is, I'm going to move this screen because I don't want to be staring over here. Hang on one second. Let me just adjust my screen here. And I'm just not going to be able to see your comments for a minute. Let me just read through these. Just bear with me here. Let's do this. Present full screen. Okay. So we talked about trust issues. Public confidence. Confidence in the police department's ability to serve and protect fairly and justly may be diminished. This can lead to decreased cooperation with law enforcement, hindering efforts to solve crimes and maintain public safety. Number 3, community relations. Relationships between police and the community may become strained or hostile. That could increase tensions, protests, and demand for accountability and reform from community members. 4, impact and vulnerability of groups. Marginalized and vulnerable communities who may already have history with negative interaction with law enforcement could feel partially impacted. This is just a fallout from this. They may feel more further marginalized or targeted if misconduct involved discrimination or abuse of power. I talked about discrimination earlier. Could any of that have happened in other cases? Absolutely. Look at what you're finding out in the Karen Reed case. Media scrutiny. The incident and its aftermath often received extensive media coverage, which can amplify public perception and scrutiny of both the department and the officers involved. Political and legal ramifications. There could be political pressure and reforms or charges within the department and legal implications if the misconduct results in lawsuits or criminal charges. There needs to be political and legal ramifications. We need an overhaul of the whole system. The entire system. They all need to go. Rebuilding trust. Efforts to rebuild trust and repair the department's image can be time-consuming and challenging, requires sustained efforts in transparency, accountability, and community engagement. This may never be fixed. It may never be fixed. And I asked Google, I asked a question, what percentage of the public trusts police? Look at this statistic. The decline is often attributed to incidents recorded on a video in which law enforcement officers have either clearly engaged in misconduct or criminal activity or have been perceived in doing so. The Gallup organization notes in the trust in police have declined from 51% to 45% over the last 3 years. And this was from 2023. So in 3 years, it dropped to 45%. That is saying now that not even half the country, half the population in the United States believes and trusts in their law enforcement systems. That's a major problem. That is a huge and major problem. Believe me, my perception has changed. After this case, my perception has changed. I back good law enforcement officers. I don't back trash like this. I can't back trash like this. Scott chiming in $5 says a major problem is that DAs get elected into office and via political connections, power, then the staff is very on hand-picked mass state police groups, and that's bad. Absolutely. Absolutely, Scott. A lot of politics here, which is the craziest thing. We come from the birth of fighting back here 251 years ago. There were some guys that just said, look, we're going to fight back against corruption. We don't want to be ruled. They went on a boat and they fired off a bunch of tea into the harbor and started the Boston Tea Party. That started the Revolution War, I'm sorry. They fought back against corruption. And what has happened here in Massachusetts has become one of the most corrupt states in this country. All right, moving on. Do this. It's going to malfunction now. Come on. Come on, little doggy. Let's do that. Okay, so what do we have to do here for checks and balances? Acknowledgement and accountability. The public acknowledges the issue and accept responsibility. Publicly, they need to acknowledge the issue and accept responsibility for any wrongdoing committed by the officer. I think we're heading in that direction. Maybe. There was an investigation. Conduct a thorough and transparent investigation into the officer's conduct, ensuring that it's impartial and independent if possible. And again, if possible. Discipline. If misconduct is found, take decisive disciplinary actions against the officer up to and including termination. This demonstrates the wrongdoing and is not tolerated. Communication. Keep the public informed about the investigation and take actions because transparency builds trust. We need that now. I'm telling you, to rebuild that image of the Massachusetts State Police. Who knows? Maybe they don't care. I hope they do. For the citizens' sake, I want people to feel trusted, have trust if they ever need to go to the Mass State Police and need help. I have to say, I was stopped the other night, a couple of weeks ago, maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. 4 or 5 weeks ago, I was stopped for speeding out on the highway, 95. One exit from my house, stopped by a trooper. Couldn't have been a nicer guy. Couldn't have been a nicer guy. There are good police in this profession that care about their job. They care about upholding the law. They do things with integrity. And I don't know what it is. Something in the line of work here with this guy went wrong. Was it specifically this case? I don't know, because usually things like this tend to ramp up and have a track record. So policy review and reform, evaluate existing policies and procedures that may have allowed misconduct to occur. Implement reforms to prevent similar issues in the future. Needs to be more training. There needs to be more community engagement. Engage with the community and open up forums and meetings to discuss concerns, answer questions, and rebuild relationships. Leadership accountability. And that's really where this failed here. Leadership from the top. This should have been reported, but they're all buddies. They're all the bosom buddies. Hold department leadership accountable for oversight and ensuring officers uphold ethical standards. And believe me, every single person that was involved in that text chain that involved themselves in this and approved what was going on, they need to be disciplined as well, and if not, fired. Independent oversight. Consider involving independent oversight bodies or civilians, review boards to provide additional scrutiny and accountability. And then long-term commitment. Demonstrate a sustained commitment to transparency, accountability, and ethical conduct over time to rebuild the trust in the department. All right, let's make some sense of the jury reaching out to Team Reed. Let me just check my phone here. 2 seconds. Let's see. Okay, so we got some reports that there is a motion to dismiss that has been filed. There has been a juror that has reached out to Team Reed and gave some information as to what happened inside the jury room where they thought would be helpful in this case. So let's talk a little bit about that. So I want to go over the charges again for Karen Reed, which are completely bogus and frivolous and everything above. The charge is second-degree murder, manslaughter while operating under the influence of alcohol, leaving the scene of personal injury and death. So some new information and the new motion. Karen Reed's lawyers have filed a motion to dismiss 2 of her charges, including second-degree murder, arguing that the jury was unanimous in their decision to acquit her of these charges. Reed's defense team alleged that she was framed and points to unsolicited information from the juror indicating unanimous agreement on her innocence from murder and leaving the scene. Jurors A, B, and C allegedly communicated their unanimous decisions to acquit Reed of her to her attorneys. Defense attorney Alan Jackson asserts the jury unanimously agreed to acquit Reed of the murder and leaving the scene, which is so strange because they're saying manslaughter. Like, if you can't prove the accident, which is essentially what ARCA did, ARCA proved that there was never an accident. Literally said in short, that Karen Reed's vehicle never made contact with Officer John O'Keefe, and John O'Keefe never made contact in an accident with Karen Reed. The injuries that were sustained to John were not consistent with making contact with an SUV. I mean, it's been proven. So I am finding it very hard how they came to this determination, how they got hung and stuck on this charge. And again, I think it goes back to looking at that verdict slip. It's confusing. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I mean, I could be wrong, but when I look at it, it's still confusing to me, even though it was corrected. So then we hear defense attorney David Yannetti received a screenshot of the text message from jury B confirming the jury's decision. The defense argues these unanimous decisions prevent retrial on the murder and leaving the scene charges under double jeopardy principles. So essentially trying to charge the same person for the same crime twice. And then Martin G. Weinberg joins the defense team, emphasizes the constitutional issues involved, including Reed's rights under the 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment regarding the jury verdict, finality, and double jeopardy protections. And like I said, and someone says this in the chat earlier, look, they wouldn't have gone out and this lawyer would have not have taken this case if he didn't think something was there. And I think they have a good point. I'm very hopeful to all of the new information that we've heard here. Let me go to my next slide. I don't know. Oh, okay. So polling the jury. So courts have also, and this question has come up, courts have also found that judges must give the parties a reasonable amount of time to ask for a poll before the verdict is recorded and the jury is dismissed. In a few states, such as Massachusetts and Connecticut, the judge doesn't necessarily have to agree to the request. And I think that a lot of people were asking, like, why didn't Jackson Unetti or Team Reed stand up and say, Your Honor, can we poll the jury? I don't know. Maybe they just wanted to get the hell out of there and fight this in further motions. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Again, I'm not a lawyer. Maybe Melanie Little or Mark Betterow has gone over this. I haven't had time to really listen to any of their feedback yet, but that could be possible. That could be the possibility. All right, let's hear from, let's go to this video here. And this was from, I always like this, live now from Fox. And let's hear what kind of the media is saying about this. And then I'm going to go to Peter Tragos, lawyer. There's some sections in his video that I want to go over. I'm not going to completely use the whole video. I'm going to take all his content, but I hope Peter doesn't mind. And I've always respected Peter in his decisions, the way that he does his lives. They're so very well presented and very easy to follow. And he breaks the law down in simplest terms. But let's hear this here.
A major trial that we were following, the Karen Reed murder trial, was declared a mistrial. We're learning new motion.
Chiming in real quick before we get to this says, yes, Brian, jury still may have been confused about finding guilt or innocence separately on the 3 counts, may have thought that they have had to be 12 not guilties on all 3 counts. That is a possibility, Scott. And again, when I pull up the lawyer, we're going to see the verdict slip. It's still confusing to me. When they go over it. All right, let's get through this.
Put forth by the attorneys for Karen Reed today, as the defense team says jurors were unanimous on acquitting her of murder, as the jurors of the trial unanimously concluded she was not guilty of murder or of leaving the scene of a deadly.
Beverly, thank you for the 25 on Venmo. I appreciate that.
Accident. Were deadlocked on only the remaining manslaughter charge before the judge abruptly declared a mistrial, her defense team said on Monday. I want to continue here on Live Now from Fox and learn more about potentially what this means. We're going to bring into the conversation right here on Live Now from Fox, TMZ executive producer Michael Babcock. Thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. And maybe how big of these developments are they? And maybe how truthful are these 3 jurors saying that it was 12-0 unanimous of an acquittal on this murder charge?
Hey, Andy, thanks for having me. Yeah, look, this is a massive development here. Obviously, we know, and this trial has, I hesitate to bring up OJ just because obviously that's something even 30 years later that is still grips the country. But this trial really, it did grip the country, Andy, and people
yes,
out.
I watched this earlier this morning to prepare, and I was like, this guy actually was pretty good, even though they had who's the guy that runs TMZ? They had him on doing some earlier video. And it was just disastrous. All his facts were, all his information, his facts were wrong. But this guy actually was good. And that's why I wanted to show this, because I wanted to chime in how TMZ or the mainstream media was talking about this. But I want to hear it from a lawyer's perspective too. So we'll get to that in a minute. But let's play through this.
Outside of the courthouse celebrating when the mistrial came down. And there was a tremendous amount of interest in this case, bottom line. So we have now found out that through Reed's attorney, a guy named Alan Jackson, that on the second-degree murder charge and one of the other charges as well, that 3 jurors informed the defense that they were 12-0 unanimous, not guilty when it came to Karen Reed's guilt or innocence. Now, there was a 3rd charge that the jury was unable to reach a verdict on. As a matter of fact, it looked like they were going towards being guilty on that charge. Still wasn't unanimous, though. They deliberated for days after day after day. And finally, when they could not reach a verdict on all 3, the judge declares a mistrial. Now, right after, the prosecution, Andy, says, we're going to retry this thing. No ifs, ands, or buts here. Alan Jackson, Karen Reed's attorney, is essentially saying, hey, look, you, the judge, you had a duty to inform us that the jurors reached a verdict, a not guilty verdict on 2 of these charges, including the most serious charge, the second-degree murder charge. And because of that, to retry Karen Reed would be tantamount to double jeopardy. And because of that, they are now hoping that the prosecution will not be able to recharge on those 2. And if they want to recharge on that 3rd lesser charge, then so be it.
Yeah, is this more about the judge in that fact that they didn't necessarily come to a unanimous decision on all three, but they could come to a decision on two of the three, and they could have come forward and acquitted her on those as well. As
it's still very odd to me. How can you be hung if ARCA literally ARCA proved there was no accident? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to me. That's the thing that I just can't get through this.
Is this maybe an indictment on the judge and what we were learning about in the legal process as a whole?
It certainly seems like that, and I fully understand that. This is the judge that's still presiding over this case, and to come out and to just attack the judge or throw the judge under the bus. I don't think that that's what the tack that Karen Reed's people or defense attorney wants to take here. But yeah, I mean, bottom line, and they've filed documents now with the court. They're saying, look, how could you not have told us that the jury had reached a verdict again on the most, the charge that's the most serious, the charge that carries decades and decades behind bars? How could you not?
Yeah, and that's the thing, maybe these are flat earthers and they just deny science. I sit here and think about it. I'm like, dude, like literally, I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be flat out honest here. Okay. I was a little disappointed by the presentation with ARCA. I thought, and I said, if they can come in with some visual presentations, and I think this is something that they need to do. And I talked about this on my show with Mark Betterow, and even Mark said this too. If this goes back to a retrial, if they're going to retry this, the defense needs to lead with ARCA, and they need to get some visual presentations together, because I think that's where it fell a little short. If they would have had a visual presentation, that was what I was waiting for. Like, I'm waiting. ARCA's going to get up. They're going to have a reconstruction. They're going to have some videos to show. This is going to fucking nail it down for the jury. There's going to be no question here. They're going to come back, all 12, not guilty. Karen Reed's going to walk out of that courtroom. And I went on their website. I went on their YouTube channel, and like, they do fantastic recreations. If they would have done that, if it was allowed to come in, and they were able to present that in court, it would have locked it down 12-0. Karen Reed's out walking around, a free woman, name cleared right now. But there was restrictions, and we knew this. And again, and I go back to saying this, they need Karen Reed in this case. That's the fall person. They have nowhere else they can go now. So they need to keep pushing this and pushing this and pushing this, that it's Karen Reed. And I'm going to tell you right now, my friends, if this goes back to a retrial, they're never, ever, 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 ever going to find a jury that's ever going to convict Karen Reed. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen, because people have a brain. So at least some of those people in the jury had a brain. And, they're just like, there's no way possible, because they listened to the science and they saw through all the corruption and the cover up. I mean, it's flat out. It's so obvious. We sat here for 8 weeks. 8 weeks. And this is where the people, I sit here and I go, seriously? You thought Karen Reed was guilty? There's not one thing in that chain of testimony or evidence that you saw that made you scratch your head and go, something's a little weird here. Something doesn't add up. I have to question those people, the people that sit here and go, oh yeah, she's dead guilty. I mean, she did it. There's nothing in that 8-week testimony that made you turn around, look in the mirror and scratch your head and go, something doesn't seem right here. Something seems a little off. All right, let's keep playing.
Tell us that the jury was 12-0 for not guilty, and they do believe wholeheartedly here that that verdict should have been allowed to stand. And again, if you want to recharge on that third charge that they could not come to an agreement on, then so be it. But 12-0 not guilty, they would like that to stand.
Yeah, and the intent part would be that vehicular manslaughter charge that they potentially could retry, or certainly allowing it, one of the 3 charges. And this was 5 days of deliberations. They were deadlocked as well.
Yes.
I do want to put up also this tweet as another development from this Boston area trial is Massachusetts State Trooper, the lead investigator, Michael Proctor, suspended without pay during a duty status hearing today. How big of a development is that? And maybe how much does that kind of look at the credibility of this investigation as a whole? Because I think there were some murky lenses through that as well, that we were getting a picture of it. How big of a development was that?
Okay, real quick, just want to get to this. Chloe Albert's Revenge, I love this. $5 says, when people dislike science, I direct them to the nearest outlet and give them a fork, just for a quickie lesson via Thomas Edison. I love that.
I think it's a massive development. This trooper was the guy who was in charge of this investigation, and he's immediately suspended after the mistrial that is announced. And then today he goes in front of a commission made up of 3 officers, or 3 troopers. And like you said, Andy, suspended without pay. They take his gun, take the badge, they take it all. Now, he had made some, really sort of gross comments. And, I hope that Karen Reed kills herself, called her a whack job. That's just the start of it. This investigation, if you listen to the defense, it was a mess, from how the police at the start collected evidence to people who were talked to, people who weren't talked to. It really does paint a picture of this investigation just being just so disorganized from the very start. And now, yes, the guy who oversaw it, the fact that he is not even an acting police officer as we sit here and talk right now, I don't know how they retry this case, Andy, and I don't know how they ever get a conviction, given what we know has gone on in this trial. It's hard to believe.
Yeah, some inappropriate comments there kind of led to this as well. And it's very sad that we're talking about this, as Boston police officer John O'Keefe lost his life tragically there back in January of 2002.
Right, Scott.
And it's going to be potentially a circus again if they retry this case there in Massachusetts around a potential another vehicular manslaughter or beyond for this Karen Reed trial. All right, Michael, thank you again. I appreciate your time here on Live Now.
That was actually not a bad interview. Charlie says, $5 says, Lally said that the cold was a weapon in closing. Excuse me. They probably factored hypothermia in as a cause of death. Also, they were confused by the instructions. Yeah, there was a lot of botchedness through this whole trial, which is just, the whole thing is screwy. Okay, let me just pull this up. I want to go back to the statement at the end that the jurors came out and said. And I want you to kind of, when I read this, something to me just seemed very legal about it. And I think that might have told a little bit of maybe one of the people that were on the jury. So despite our rigorous efforts, we continue to find ourselves at an impasse. Our perspectives on the evidence are starkly divided. Some members of the jury firmly believe that the evidence surpassed the burden of proof, established the elements of the charges beyond reasonable doubt. The jury said in its note, conversely, others find the evidence fails to meet the standard and does not sufficiently establish the necessary elements of charges. The deep division is due not to the lack of effort or diligence, but rather a sincere adherence to our individual principles and moral convictions. To continue to deliberate would be futile and only serve to force us to compromise this deeply held beliefs. That sounds very legal to me. I wonder if you know where I'm getting at, if this was a lawyer that was on the jury. Chloe says they knew the buzzwords to use: attorney on the jury. Absolutely. I'm going to say that is an attorney on the jury. All right, let's hear from Peter Tragos and his dad, Big George. I want to go over the verdict slip, jury believed prosecution's theory, and motion to dismiss. I'm sure you all have reviewed this, but I thought we could pull it up and opine a little bit on it because Peter and his dad always do a great live, and they break it down really easy. And I want to hear from the jury slip again. The verdict slip, because that to me is still very confusing. Let's start here. Juries believe the prosecution.
Right, but I think that if what's in
And
these.
by the way, go over and subscribe to Peter Tragos, the lawyer you know. If you haven't, hope he doesn't mind that I use a little bit of this content today in my live. Give him full credit. And I've used stuff in the past, so I don't think he'll mind. Here we go.
If it's true, it is indicative that at least some of them think he got hit by a car. I mean,
Yes.
I don't understand how you get there, even in the manslaughter. If, like, from my perspective, when I listen to that evidence and that testimony of the experts, I don't feel like the state ever proved he got hit by a car. But
And this
that's
is
not how this jury felt, which is that's the interesting part. And that's what's coming out in this affidavit that is not necessarily good for Karen Reed and her team and the new trial that, some people thought was a slam dunk or a guarantee, or a lot of people in the media world saw it a certain way, but the jurors don't always see it the way the media does. A lot of times they do, but not always.
And this is great for the prosecution, because if they're going to retry this case, then they've got a little heads up here. You know what? We did a good job of proving that. Now we got to work a little bit more on proving the other elements of the case.
Yeah.
So this really helps the prosecution.
Rogue's got a good point. If I was a lawyer, if it was a lawyer, it was a piss poor one. They should have known and explained to the rest of the jury how this works and be more clear to the judge. So that tells me, if it was a lawyer that was on that jury, that tells me that he probably was in favor that Karen was guilty. Because I don't see someone being like 50-50. So I think you make a good point. And maybe they just got to a point where they just got sick of fighting about it. And he's like, I'll just write the note and we'll just split this and that's it. But I just find it very odd that they didn't prove an accident. So how can you convict her of one of these charges? I just don't agree. I can't agree with it. I don't understand it.
When they retry this case.
Potentially. I mean, it's a new jury. So they have their own set of circumstances and unknowns that it's hard to guess, right?
It is. But if I was a prosecutor, I'd look at this and I'd say to myself, we did a good job on that part.
You didn't watch the whole trial. I don't think they did good. Really great job.
Some jurors believed them.
Yeah, exactly. They believed it, but I'm not sure it was because of the prosecutors. Okay.
I agree.
Okay. On the following day, on July 2nd, Attorney Jackson was contacted by a juror.
I'm going to get a glass of water. I'll be right back.
Okay. The following day, on July 2nd, Attorney Jackson was contacted by a juror in this matter, Juror A, who stated that she/he wished to inform him of the true results of the jury's
the verdict slip.
Here for a second.
The verdict slip.
And I want to show you this, because here's my thought.
This is confusing.
And I know your kind of feelings overall on this motion and kind of, how much, what the teeth of it is, but let me show you the verdict slip. Okay. And we talked about this a little bit already, and I showed you these, and we talked.
You have murder in the second degree. In the above entitled case, we, the jury, say that the defendant is, and you have option 1, not guilty, option 2, guilty of the offense and charge, murder in the second degree. So that's the first paper.
Talked about, the different boxes, but if the jury
so confusing.
Went through these verdict slips,
not this paper,
and they were unanimous, not guilty on count 1 and count 3, what is to stop them from checking the box not guilty here that we're looking at on count 1, and then skipping over count 2, which by all intents and purposes seems where they hung, and then clicking not guilty here as well? The big discussion was whether or not there should be not guilty boxes on all these lesser includeds. I've seen a lot of that on Twitter today. This is exactly what we knew was going to happen because the way the verdict form was set up, but not really, right? Not really, because
I'm going to disagree with Peter here because this confuses me. I get above here, it says not guilty, but maybe this is where they got confused. There should have been not guilties. That would have cleared everything up. I mean, that's just my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. That's the way I look at it. It's a lot of information to look on that page. And maybe that's the confusion. Could have been. I don't know. Not a lawyer, but we're listening to one. All right, let's keep playing
the opportunity and the way on the verdict form, which they said they understood, to check not guilty on counts 1 and 3. So how does that affect your analysis? And if you're the prosecutor arguing that this should be hung on all 3 charges, how does this affect your analysis that they could have checked not guilty?
Well, it's the argument that it still wasn't a final verdict. You know, I mean, is that what?
Kurt, do you have a moment? Can you jump up here and clear this up for us? If you have a moment, I'll drop the link. I know you're in the chat. You've jumped up before. Maybe you can clarify. I don't understand this. My brain is all over the place about this. But if you want to jump up, I'll drop the link for you, and maybe you can give us some insight. Because how can you be hung on one charge if they haven't proved the accident, if they haven't proved the death? But yeah, Kurt's going to jump up real quick and try to make some sense of this. But I don't get it. We'll play this until Kurt comes up, and then, I actually want to bring back this jury slip. The multiple. Let's see. Right here. I need him to. I need him to join. Let me just bring him up here.
Hello,
Kurt. How's it going? Good to see you.
I'm doing great. Just came back from the gym. So
I'm sorry.
How are you doing? I said I just came back from the gym. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. So make some sense of this here, because I'm confused.
Yeah.
How the hell can the jury essentially acquit her on 2 of these charges, but be hung on one where we literally saw Arca come in and prove that there was no accident, that there was no murder? And this slip to me is very confusing. I mean, I don't know.
Well, the defense thought it was confusing too. And what they asked for was for the wording on that not guilty for 2 to be changed, which they got. They got what they wanted. So it's where it says not guilty, they got that changed to not guilty of manslaughter or any lesser included. So there was still one not guilty box, just like there was before. They just got the wording modified to make it clear that the not guilty was for the manslaughter or any lesser included charge. As to how they can be hung, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. If you believe the friend of the friend who reported the juror, in the affidavit, then they say, well, there was 8 votes for guilty for manslaughter, right, or some version of it, I presume, because eight votes for guilty of what exactly? Because there's 4 options here, so that's unclear. But whatever. So I don't know how they can be hung. There's no case. It doesn't make any sense to me.
It's so odd. Amy Positive Pathway, $5 says charges 1 and 3 have intent. Charge 2 has no intent. Someone may believe she hit him and did not know. But how can you do it? This is the big question, Amy, is that I've said this 1,000 times in this live. We've literally had physics scientists come in and say there was no accident, like it didn't happen. So, like what is the argument inside that jury room? It's just, I wish I was a fly on the wall. I wish I was a fly on the wall to hear how they were deliberating this. And, reports said it became like a bullying situation. My sources told me that it became a bullying situation inside that room. And it's just interesting.
Well, the friend of a friend or whoever in the affidavit seemed to suggest otherwise, because one of them had commented that, they agreed to disagree and it was relatively civil. So that doesn't seem to, at least that's what I read in the affidavit.
For sure.
So
yeah, and again, you never really know with all these sources too, because things fly around. But I was right on the biggest charge, the second-degree murder. We did hear that they essentially said that they all voted 12-0 on that. But it's just odd, man. This is just so weird and wacky. Have you ever seen anything like this before in any of the cases you've come across, Kurt?
Not really. I mean, I would have dismissed this case at the end of the state's case on the basis that even taking every presumption in favor of the state, no reasonable jury could convict. I didn't think they had it at the end of the state's case. And I certainly didn't think they had it at the end of the defense cases, but apparently 8 jurors disagree with me. But, stranger things have been known to happen in law. One of the reasons we have courts of appeals, because every once in a while, the jury will go way off the reservation. I've commented before on this, that I believe that there's basically a 5% base chance that no matter what happens, the jury's going to convict just because the defendant is sitting at the defense table. And I think that the hung verdict kind of proves that I'm right. That just because there's, someone's dead, we've got to do something. We can't let them get away with it. The police wouldn't charge. They must be guilty of something. So yeah, I feel like there's basically a 5% chance of guilt no matter what happens. And in the history of law, there are some really insane convictions that have been overturned because this no reasonable jury could possibly believe this idea, which is one of the reasons we have the appeal in the first place. But
so
juries can do weird things.
Yeah. So what is the next steps now here? Obviously, we have the file for motion to dismiss. Karen's set to have a status hearing on the 22nd. Do you think this even gets tried again? I mean, I know everybody's saying like, we're waiting for the feds to step in. We're waiting for the feds to step in. I don't think they're going to do anything.
I'm not sure the feds, really strictly speaking, can do anything. Their jurisdiction here is fairly minimal. They could go after some of the individuals involved for deprivation of civil rights, but ultimately speaking, they don't have any inherent authority to stop Massachusetts from bringing a case. There's no possibility of the federal government giving an injunction. It's actually against the federal statutes and case law. So, but let me give some other analysis here, because I think there's some opinions that or some issues that may not necessarily be cleared. Clear. So there was this U.S. Supreme Court case called Bluford, which was referred to in the motion. In the case of Bluford, which happened in 2012, in that case, the jury came back not guilty on some counts and then was hung as to other counts. In that particular case, the judge sent it all back to the jury. Said, I'm not going to accept any of these verdicts. Try harder. When they ultimately came back, they were hung as to all counts. They couldn't agree. Okay, and so they appealed. And they said, well, this isn't fair because the jury, said unanimously that I was not guilty. That should be the end of it. U.S. Supreme Court disagreed. They said that, that because the judge didn't accept the verdict, because not all the verdicts were resolved, the judge was at liberty to send it back. And so it was nothing more than a tentative decision, not a final decision. So I think that even if Bev had asked the jury, like, what are you hung on? And even if they had come back and said, not guilty on 1 and not guilty on 3, even if they had said that, I think Bev would still be within her rights to say, well, I'm not going to accept it and I'm going to throw it out. Now, the Massachusetts rules are clear that she can accept it. She can accept a partial verdict. So she's at liberty to, but I don't think she has to. So, like, the problem with the defense's theory is, even if she had inquired and even if the jury told her, I think she could have still been like, no, I'm throwing out the whole thing. Mistrial across the board, go away. So, because that seems to be the relevant case law.
This is so odd.
Yeah, I know. I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm just here to tell you answers.
No, that's what I wanted. It's just such an odd thing. So what do you think happens now going forward? I mean, do you think the status hearing happens and then here we are, we're going to reset and go through all this again? Like, what is the defense now have in their pocket, going forward to try to stop this? Can they get those 2 charges dropped now with this information, or can Judge Bev just literally turn around and just say, I'm not accepting this?
No, this particular motion is a non-starter for me. I think the case should have been dismissed at the end of the state's case. I think there should be a directed verdict on the basis that there's no case. But this theory about, the jury really returned a not guilty verdict, I'm like, no, they didn't. And this doesn't go anywhere. So I would dismiss this out of hand and be like, no, you can't have any of this. What I expect to happen is that at their status hearing, the state is going to continue to indicate their intent to go forward. If they are going to drop this, I imagine it's going to happen sometime quietly on a Friday somewhere, like 6 months from now. That they'll just quietly dismiss it at some later point. But so I expect them to be like, yeah, we're going forward for the meantime. And yeah, there is no hope, in my humble opinion, of this motion working. There's no hope at this time of getting a legal determination that the charges shouldn't go forward. I mean, she would have made that decision at the end of the case. She would have entered a directed verdict. She didn't do it. So she's not going to do it when it's represented to her. So if the state chooses to go forward, then I guess we get to do it all over again. And I get to make more funny videos looking at the stupid.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I said too. Like I said this, you know, in my live today. I said, look, you know, the Commonwealth needs Karen Reed, and this, you know, they need the fall person. That's why they're going to keep continuing to push this all the way through, because they need to cover for the Canton PD, they need to cover for the Massachusetts State Police Department, they need to cover for the McAlberts. I mean, that's why they need Karen Reed. They need her to fall for this to clear all of those other names, because obviously everything that we just heard in the last 8 weeks, which has been really bad, and I don't know how the hell the Commonwealth would want to pull any of those witnesses back up there. They're certainly not calling Michael Proctor back, I can tell you that.
I don't see how they can't, because if they don't, the defense gets to call him, and I would if I were the defense, just to mock the heck out of him.
Like first person I bring up there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so I don't think that's really an option. He is the lead investigator. He was involved in everything. So it's like, how do you not call him? You know, so yeah, that's a real problem with the disgrace and being thrown out of, you know, the rest of it. But yeah, so that might be an incentive for the state, but they're not going to make that clear now. They're going to make her sweat for a while. Also, by the way, just in terms of like how juries can be and how unpredictable they can be, in Florida, there was the ice cream murder case.
Yeah, I remember
the first time that went to trial, it was 11-1 to acquit. So 11 members of the jury said not guilty, one said guilty. It went back to retrial, and then it was 12-0 to convict. So this is back to what I was saying earlier about the 5% base chance. Like any given Sunday, there's a chance that they're going to score just because they're on the field. And, you know, so yeah, strange things can happen in law. What can you do?
Strange things. Yeah, and nothing surprises me in Massachusetts anymore. Nothing surprises me. But
yeah,
no, I appreciate it. You know, I appreciate jumping up and kind of clarifying a little bit of this. And you know, again, you know, we'll just keep plugging away and keep talking about it. I know you've been talking about it a lot on your channel. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Kurt.
But also with like the jury form being confusing, the defense did get what it wanted. They asked for the modification to the instruction. So on page 2 here, which is what you're seeing, where it says not guilty, the judge changed that. And so it said, you know, not guilty of manslaughter or any lesser included. So the jury had that for, I don't know, a day and a half or whatever they had it. So they had the new, and the judge also gave that additional instruction. Remember from the bench about the whole thing? To clarify it? She read it. She read that instruction, and she gave him a copy of that instruction. Plus, she gave him a copy of the additional form, which at least the defense said they were satisfied by that. So the defense even said they were satisfied with all those changes, and they were happy. So they had that for a day and a half and still managed to deadlock. So presumably it wasn't because they were confused on the instruction. I don't know how 8 people think that this car hit Karen Reed, because I saw that photo of the car at 5:07 in the morning, which was in the defense's clothes. It looks suspiciously like an intact taillight to me. Saw a lot of red. So I'm not sure how it can be intact at 5 in the morning and shattered to all oblivion at 2 in the morning. I'm not sure how that works. So I have issues.
A lot of issues, Kurt. A lot of issues. Well, look, I appreciate you jumping up and kind of going through some of this for us. And
no problem.
You know, I know you just got back from the gym. I'm probably going to end this pretty soon too. I got some personal stuff I need to take care of. But yeah, anytime, man, you're in the room, just jump up and kind of explain this stuff to us. Because again, I'm not a lawyer. You are. And I think you've kind of brought some clarity to it.
Well, make sure to check me out and my friends. We're doing a collab stream starting tomorrow with Baldwin. It's going to be me and 6 other people doing a collab joint stream. It's going to be epic. We're going to watch the entire Baldwin trial. I think it's going to be really interesting, depending on how the facts actually lay out a trial. I think it could be a very intellectually interesting case. We may get to the end of this thing, and I'd be like, you know, this could go either way, just from pure logic. So I'm really looking forward to seeing if it's going to be as interesting as I'm hoping it will be.
So what they're trying to hold him accountable for is that he was essentially in charge of the whole thing, correct?
Well, not anymore. No, the defense successfully got the title of producer thrown out. So they can no longer use that against him. The fact that he was a quote unquote producer, that's out now. Their theory of the case is he held the gun and he pulled the trigger. So he's the guy who pulled he's the guy who pulled the trigger. So I don't think that can be disputed really on the act. You know, if he tries to say, well, I didn't pull the trigger, I think that's a non-starter. So the act, I think, is a foregone conclusion. What's much more interesting to me is the mental state requirement. Because in order to be guilty of involuntary manslaughter, you have to be reckless. Reckless is conscious disregard of a known risk. I have to know there's a risk that I'm disregarding. And I think Baldwin's argument, or at least the argument I would make if I were his lawyers, would be in the same way that Baldwin trusts, safety coordinators and, stuntmen and everything else to check the rigging and check the lighting and check, the harnesses and check everything. The same way he depends on those people and relies on those people, he was reasonable to rely on the armorer when she said that this is a safe gun. And if she was able to reasonably rely on that representation, then it makes it no longer a known risk because he was reasonably relying on that representation. So I imagine that's going to be his defense. And then it just becomes an issue of, well, do you buy that? Or do you buy the fact that, no, that doesn't matter. Whoever holds the gun, has to ultimately be responsible, and it's inherently reckless if you don't check yourself. So I think that's what the battle is on the mental state, and that's very interesting to me.
The armorer is saying that she's not going to testify, correct?
Yes, that's correct. She refused to testify. The state tried to grant her immunity, but they waited to the last second, which was, the judge was like, no, because you're waiting till the very last moment to do this, and it's kind of unfair surprise. If they'd done 6 months ago, they would have been able to do it, but so they waited too long. So the armorer is not testifying. The fact that he's a producer can no longer be held against him. The real problem for him is if he tries to take the stand. That would be disaster area, because we've got, all the interviews with the cops and also on, with George Stephanopoulos, and the impeachment will be real. So I don't think he can take the stand. So that's, that's probably the end of that.
Karen says, I'm confused. It's the Commonwealth had she might mean ARCA information. Why did they continue to go legally? Because they, like I said, they needed Karen Reed for this case. They needed to pin it on someone. That's
I don't know. I mean, I thought it was a disaster area. I thought, this doesn't make any sense, and there's just way too many holes in this. So I don't know why they continue to press it. Seems like a very foolish thing to do.
I mean, we found out over 8 weeks. I mean, look at the testimony. I mean, geez, that fell apart really quick. Within like day one, it fell apart really quick. So we will see. We'll see what
Anything
happens.
else I can answer for you before I sign off here?
No, I'm good. But thanks for jumping
cool.
up really quick. You're welcome on the show anytime. And if you ever need me, hit me up. We'll hang out. I'm not a legal scholar, but I can give you kind of the man on the street opinion.
No problem. I'll sign off so you can close out the stream, man. Have a good one.
Thanks, Kurt. I appreciate it. Go check out Kurt on Uncivil Law. He's going to be doing the Baldwin trial. It's going to be big. Awesome. Thanks, Kurt. Appreciate that. Yeah, friends, it's getting close to 2 hours. I'm going to wrap this one up. I think I'm going to head over to the Canton Select Board meeting tonight. Tonight. I just had like a brain download really quick. I think I'm going to go check that out. So I'm going to hydrate, get some food here, and then head off on to Canton. If I don't, I definitely will be back on Thursday with Mazza Media. He's in my chat right now. Mazza's going to be joining me live in the studio. We'll be back in the studio on Thursday for a live, system reboot, for a live with Mazza. We're going to talk the Karen Reed case. We'll talk Sandra Birchmore, and we'll just go from there. So hopefully I'll let you know if I decide to go tonight to the Canton Select Board and fill you in on all the exciting thing that is going to happen over there. But Canton Select Board starts at 7 tonight, and my live with Mazza is going to start on 8 p.m. on Thursday night. So hopefully you all can join us. I want to say thank you to Kurt for jumping up on Civil Law. Go check him out. Subscribe. He's going to do the Baldwin trial. That might be something that I jump on because I'm very curious about it. and maybe we'll do that over here too. So let's see. Everybody, thank you so much for the support. Thank you for all the super chats. Members, I appreciate everything that you did coming over and hanging out on this live today. I hope you got some useful information about it and some legal information at the end for Kurt on civil law to clear that up. All right, everybody, and hit the outro. I'll see everybody soon. Be back in the studio on Thursday. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Liking and comment down below is the biggest thing that you can do to help any YouTuber out to get this damn thing out in the algorithm. All right, everybody, take care. I'll talk to everybody soon. Bye.